It was around 6 months ago now that we reached the unprecedented situation of mass cancellations of cruises. World cruises were cut short and guests were sent home from exotic destinations. Since then, the vast majority of the world's cruising fleet has laid empty, just waiting for things to return to some form of normality. The ships themselves are no longer a familiar sight in popular tourist destinations, so where have they all gone? In the beginning, you'll have seen the news stories of cruise lines struggling to repatriate crew members around the world. Basically, as more and more countries closed their borders, it became impossible for the lines to send their crew home by air. Instead, most decided to use the ships themselves to take their crew back to their families. This meant that some of the biggest seafaring nations, like the Philippines, had loads of ships waiting for health authorities to give them clearance. I remember a few months back when there were countless ships at anchor in Manila Bay, waiting for clearance to land their crew ashore. Then, once the majority of the crew got home, the ships themselves needed to be kept somewhere safe to wait for the cruise industry to restart, in a sort of hibernation mode. In the marine industry, we call it laying up. You may have heard the terms hot layup and cold layup before, and they just refer to different levels of shutdown involved. As a blunt rule of thumb, the longer you wish to lay up, the more systems you should deactivate, and the colder the layup becomes. The downside, of course, is that the more you deactivate, the longer it will take to get the ship going again. On top of that, the colder the layup, the less able the ship is to look after itself in terms of safety, security and maintenance. Because of that, most cruise ships have actually opted for a pretty warm version of a layup. They have shut down what they can, mainly guest services and hotel functions, but they've kept a lot of equipment running, especially the marine-related gear. This helps with maintenance and means that in the grand scheme of things, it shouldn't take too long to get them properly going again. They also still have crew on board, as they still need to meet the requirements of their minimum safe manning documents. These are certificates issued by a flag state that lists the bare minimum crew for a vessel to be deemed seaworthy. Normally, of course, cruise lines run far in excess of this, and it's more of an issue for cargo ships that are trying to keep crewing costs to a minimum. Now though, it is giving cruise lines a minimum level of crew that are needed as well. As they're technically still all operational vessels, they also need supplies like fuel for the engines, spares for machinery and food, water and general supplies for the crew. Ideally, they would just dock in a port where all of that sort of thing is available, but the costs involved in that are massive. So the next best thing is to anchor near to a port instead, and this is what most have now done. On the day I checked, the biggest fleet seemed to be in the Bahamas, around 100 miles to the east of Miami. At anchor we had the Celebrity, Silhouette, Edge, Reflection and Equinox, the Carnival, Liberty, Breeze, Elation, Pride, Vista, Glory, Sunshine, Horizon and Freedom, the Navigator and the Symphony of the Seas, as well as a host of others scattered around, moving to and from different ports in the region. In Asia, there was a huge cluster outside of Singapore. The Sea Princess, the Ruby, the Crown, the Sapphire, the Golden, the Sun, the Majestic and the Diamond Princess, the Costa Venezia, Serena, Atlantica, the Carnival Splendor, the Quantum, Ovation and Radiance of the Seas, the Celebrity Solstice and the Pacific Explorer. A couple of others were in Singapore itself taking on supplies, I guess before returning to the anchorage to rejoin the others. In Europe, there was a load off the south coast of the UK. The Queen Mary II, the Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth, the Britannia, Ventura, Aurora, Azura, the Morella Discovery, Explorer and the Explorer II, the Allure, the Anthem and the Jewel of the Seas. Just off the coast of Holland we had the Amsterdam, the New Statendam, the Zaandam, the Emerald Princess and the World Dream. The list goes on of course, but you're getting the idea now. Huge clusters of ships around the world just waiting for the time that they could start up again. You can immediately see that they've all located themselves close to, if not actually inside, big commercial ports where they can get all the supplies they need to keep themselves running. Each day, you'll probably see one of them heading into the port itself to load up on supplies or to change crew. You'll probably also notice them steam out to sea every now and then as well. They do that for a variety of reasons. Maybe they're looking for deep ocean water to flush through their ballast tanks, or maybe they just want to run the engines under full load. It could also be to do with the weather. If the forecast shows storms or strong winds are due, the captain will want to keep the ships safe from the worst of it. They'll either just move to a safer distance from land, or if it's particularly bad, they may steam well away and avoid it entirely. Even though there are no passengers on board, each ship is still crewed by professional seafarers, taking care of the vessel in the same way they would if there were 5,000 paying guests on board. It's just a big balancing act. The companies are trying to minimise the costs of keeping them operational, but at the same time keeping them safe and ready to welcome passengers back as soon as the industry restarts. And that brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoy content like this, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you'll know when I post new content. Until next time, thank you for watching and goodbye.